your name, but also the community board that you're representing. I'll let folks in. Let me take this waiting room off. Yeah, so rename yourself with your name and the community board you're representing. And we'll start with, we'll be doing some introductions and some stuff in the chat in a little bit. So I'll cue you when we start doing that. Awesome, good to see everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So again, we're giving folks a couple minutes to join up. And again, if you're a panelist, if you're gonna be speaking today, if you can rename yourself to show which CB you're representing. And we had nearly 70 registrants for this event. So it's very exciting to see so many people enthusiastic about talking about transportation in the Bronx. Really exciting. Also, if you are elected official, or if you're on staff for an elected official, feel free to make note of that in the chat as well, just so we can identify you. And hopefully we can give you some time to speak later if you're here. And you may have seen it already, but we are recording today's events. So, if your hair ain't looking right, you can go ahead and take your camera off if you want. We're going to be using this on our Transportation Alternatives YouTube channel. And also we'll make the video available to all the panelists. So yeah, I can, repurpose it in whatever way you need to or would like to. But note that we are recording today's events. Not live streaming. We were thinking about it. We ain't got those skills yet. We're gonna work on it. Awesome, good to see everyone. So again, as you're joining up, if you are a panelist, please go ahead and rename yourself so that we know which community board you're representing. And we'll get started in one more minute, 12:05. And we're gonna have a pretty packed room today, so we appreciate everybody. If you're not speaking, if you're not on cue to speak, to just stay on mute. We're not putting like that security function where we're muting everyone by default, because we're using a little bit more of the honor system, but please try to keep yourself on mute so none of the background noise disturbs others while they're speaking. Okay, awesome. So it's 12:05, so we'll get started with today's event. I want to welcome everyone joining us today. My name is Sean Garcia. I'm an organizer with Transportation Alternatives. I'll talk a little bit about who TA is in a little bit, but we're really excited to moderate and host this event today on Bronx transportation and getting leaders from various community boards throughout the Bronx, people who have dedicated many hours to the questions on transportation and trying to, make the Bronx a better place via transportation. So we're very excited about this forum. We want to thank everybody for joining us. It's a snow day, so it's like the perfect activity. Just hang out on a Zoom with people who are passionate about similar issues that you're passionate about from your community. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Quick introduction about myself. Again, I'm a organizer with Transportation Alternatives. I grew up in East Harlem in the Bronx and have been passionate about all things health, wellness related for the entirety of my life. And I've been an organizer for the past 20 years, specifically in the Bronx and Uptown neighborhoods on issues of health and health access, and have been with Transportation Alternatives since last summer, joining up their team as the organizer locally here. And really been great to meet all of y'all over the past couple of months. I've been able to have some great conversations, even in the midst of the pandemic. I know it's been hard for us to connect, but even via Zoom and other forms of communication, it's been great to build with everybody and see everyone's passion on this issue in our community. So that's who I am, and I'll let my other moderator introduce himself as well. Go for it, John.
Hi, my name is John Sanchez. I was the district manager for Bronx Community Board 6 the past 5 years. As a staffer, I attended more than 50 community board meetings, so more than 100 community board meetings that I've attended, but it's very rewarding and looking forward to moderating today.
Thanks so much, John. So we have a big crew with us. We're going to allow, of course, the panelists to introduce themselves and kind of give an opening statement. But before we get to that, we want to kind of get to know who's in the crowd today. And we're going to use the chat function just because we're a bigger group. So we're going to ask some questions. And if you could just take some time to reply in the chat so we can get to know each other and see who's in the room, see where you're from, all that kind of stuff. So the first question that we're going to put to the group is what community board and neighborhood are you from? So you can put your community board number if you know it, and what neighborhood you're from. Maybe where you live, where you work, all that kind of stuff. And we'll give folks a couple of seconds here to reply in the chat. Community board 5, 4, 11, 12, 7, 10, 8. Nice. Some good representation from around the borough. Morris Park, Longwood, High Bridge.
So this area here has.
Very nice. Pelham Parkway. Nice. Awesome. Oh, Council Member Alethea in the house. We'll give you some time to speak, Council Member.
Althea, and no worries, I'm here to listen.
Good to see you. And CB 11 in Harlem. So we got some Uptown representation. Awesome. Great, awesome. So again, in a sense of where folks are from, it seems like we have a good representation from around the borough. Great to see everyone here. Next question is if folks belong to any organizations or community groups that you want to shout out and rep, you could go ahead and throw that in the chat now too, so we can get a sense of the different kind of organizing that people are doing. So it could be transportation related, or it can be, you know, other work that you do in the community. So you can go ahead and drop that in the chat. Friends of Four Parks in the house. What's up, Ronaldo? Green Thumb, awesome. Community Gardeners.
Hi, John.
Bronx River Alliance, of course. No surprise that a lot of y'all who are in community boards or doing this kind of work are also doing a lot of other amazing work. See a lot of work related to environmental justice and keeping our borough clean. We got some composters in the house, folks working around open space. Very cool. Of course, a bunch of our transportation alternatives, volunteers. Very cool. All right, cool. So as people are continuing to throw that stuff in the chat, the last question is, what is your main form of transportation? So how do you get around on a regular basis? And don't worry, we're not going to judge. So whatever it is, go ahead and drop it in the chat. We want to get a sense of how people are moving throughout the borough and how we're getting around the city in general. Nice. Samantha like broke it down. Like I go from here to here to here. Awesome. A lot of walking, a lot of public transportation, a lot of bicyclists, cars. We're not judging. You got to get around, you know. We'll talk about it. We're going to talk about it today. A lot of pedestrians, a lot of walkers. Oh, we got some scooters up in here. Very good. We got the new e-scooter program, of course, launched in the East Bronx. Zip car. I love to see the car share model. People breaking down mileage. Of course, Kevin, you be counting this stuff? Very nice. Subway, express buses. Awesome. So it seems like a lot of folks are using public transportation or walking, which of course statistically is how the majority of Bronxites get around, via public transportation and walking around. And then we see a lot of cyclists, which of course is a narrative that we don't hear enough in the Bronx, right? We don't hear that Bronx is a cyclist heavy borough. So we'll talk about that for sure. And then of course we got folks who have to drive to work, who live in transportation deserts, public transportation deserts, and you know, have to find means to get around. I saw some folks dropping in ferries, using the ferry system. Of course, we've had some success with ferry expansion in the Bronx in the past few years. That's been great. Awesome, cool, great. Well, it's great to have everyone in here. It's great to see how folks are getting around. And definitely when we get into the various panel conversations and questions, we'll get deeper into, you know, what transportation means for the Bronx, right? Because it's a little bit different from every other borough. But before we give a chance for our panelists to speak and for our councilwoman to speak, just want to quickly introduce Transportation Alternatives and who we are as an organization for those who may be new to discovering TA. So Transportation Alternatives is one of the oldest transportation focused advocacy groups in New York City. We're going to be celebrating 50 years this year, which is amazing and is a really big milestone for our organization. We are a citywide organization and a city-focused organization. So while some other transportation organizations might deal with like the metro area or all of New York State, or, you know, Jersey and other parts of the tri-state area, Transportation Alternatives is specifically focused on New York City. Of course, we're involved in legislative work on the state level, and we also have our sister organization, Families for Safe Streets, which many of you may have heard of before, which deals with supporting victims of traffic crashes. And they do a lot of statewide work as well. We are primarily focused on the city. And the way that we organize ourselves as a group is that we are composed on a borough level, generally, of community members who advocate for issues around transportation, who advocate around things like open streets, pedestrian safety, and of course, creating infrastructure to support many forms of transportation. And so over the years, we've been very much involved in, helping support the expansion and creation of bicycle lane networks throughout the city, supporting pedestrian and bicycle paths on bridges, most notably, of course, for us, the Harlem bridges. We've been a big part of supporting those efforts, getting installation of safety measures, whether it be, speed traffic cameras or speed bumps and pedestrian islands and different intersections that we see a lot of traffic crashes occurring. And we also, of course, on the social side, have been big proponents of, creating social rides throughout the city. So a lot of the bicycle rides that happen throughout the Bronx and other parts of the city, TA is part of supporting that or organizing those, like the tour, the Staten Island, and of course, the tour the Bronx, we've been big supporters over the years of. And so we tackle transportation on a couple different fronts. One, investment in our communities, advocating for that investment, whether it be working with community boards, local officials, and the different agencies to get that infrastructure investment in our neighborhoods. We also do the social component where we're trying to, one, raise awareness about our issues, but also do it in a fun and a community-driven way. So organizing rides around the city, food tours, bicycle rides tied to advocacy work. So, kind of showing the disparities of the Bronx infrastructure to other parts of the city. And then, of course, the last one, which is the most unfortunate one, we do a lot of support for families and communities that have been impacted by deaths and injuries related to traffic crashes. 2021 was the deadliest year with traffic-related crashes in the past decade or so. And about a third of those deaths took place in Bronx and Uptown communities. And it's a direct reflection of the lack of investment in infrastructure to support our communities, not only support, pedestrians and cyclists, but also car drivers and making safer conditions for people to get around our communities. And, it's an unfortunate part of the work, but it's a necessary part of the work. And we are very much involved in that support and providing, advocacy support to families that have been impacted by traffic crashes, but also providing any kind of social network support that they need as they're going through their process of grieving or trying to find justice for their families. So that's a little bit about who Transportation Alternatives is. And of course, we'll get more into it as the panel and the discussion goes forward. Before we get into the panel introductions though, since we have the council member with us, Councilmember Stevens, I wonder if you could get on the mic and just share a little bit about yourself and the communities you represent and your thoughts on transportation, which we know you're one of the newest members of the Transportation Committee on City Council. We're really excited to have you on there. So if you could take the mic for a couple minutes.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you guys for having me, and I'm so happy to be here. And like I said, I'm here to listen and hear what you guys are thinking. I'm always about being collaborative and listening to what the community is saying so that I can really shape the decisions on how I go into City Hall and fight for what we want. But I'm excited to be on the Transportation Committee. It was one of the things that I did not even realize that I really wanted. I represent District 16, which is a big part of the West Bronx. And a lot of you guys know that is a transportation desert. There is not a lot of options over there. And I am really about how do we make sure that, there is transportation for everyone. One of the things, and one of the reasons why they actually put me on the committee, because one of the things that I'm really working hard and hope to see is getting us a ferry on the west side of the Bronx. I think that would help tremendously with and alleviate a lot of the issues that we have. I found when I learned that there is a ferry stop there already that is sometimes used during Yankee games, it furthered my tensions of saying like, well, why are we making it accessible when the Yankees are playing, but not for the residents who live here 365 days a year? And so for me, it's always like, we need to have stuff for us, and that's important to me. But I'm definitely here to listen, learn, and making sure that I'm taking back the feedback that I hear today to see how do we shape, transportation moving forward. And I like that in the beginning, Sean, you mentioned that the Bronx is very different when it comes to transportation. So it's important that we are dictating and saying what we want and how we want things, because it's not like other boroughs. We don't have access in the same way other boroughs have, and we don't have some of the things that they have, like, like the bike lanes and even sometimes the spacing, right? Because when you think about High Bridge, it is very tight in those areas when you're driving and the streets are so narrow. So it's really important for us as community members and community leaders to dictate what we want to see in our community. So like I said, I'm just here. I'll be here for a bit, just kind of listening. If folks have questions for me specifically, always feel free to reach out. I'm always looking for feedback. I'm working on creating advisory boards. So if folks are interested in being a part of my advisory boards and things like that, please reach out. We're going to have kicking them off within the next 2 weeks. You'll see, if those who are following me on social media, you'll see all the places that you can sign up, because I am all about governing as a community, because I am not doing this alone. This is a group project, and it's only going to be a group project if you all are involved. So my hope is that people who do live in my district and community are actively participating. And I see Chauncey's online. I just want to give him a super big shout out, because he's always making sure that I'm a part of things and including me in things. So I appreciate you guys and everyone. I'll be here listening.
Thank you so much. All right, cool. So the way that we're going to break down the program today is we're going to start off with first with some introductions and kind of like opening statements from our panelists. So they'll each get up to 5 minutes, and we'll be doing timekeeping. So Dinesh will be doing our timekeeping and dropping into the chat the time left. So speakers, make sure you're watching that. So like Dinesh will tell you when you have 60 seconds left and 30 seconds left. And then when your time is up, we'll let you know. So John and I will help support you on that. But, up to 5 minutes. You can speak for, a minute or two if you want, but up to 5 minutes. And then after we get through that panel introduction, we're going to get into a question period where we're going to be first asking a round of questions that are pre-made, that our Transportation Alternatives Bronx Committee has come together and collaborated on designing these questions. We'll ask these questions and give 90 seconds for panelists to respond if they want to. They don't have to respond to every single question. They can reply to the questions that they want to address. And then after we get through that period, we're gonna open up the floor for questions from the floor to build upon the stuff that we asked in the pre-made portion. And then the last 15 to 20 minutes of our event today, we're scheduled to go to 2 o'clock. The last 15 to 20 minutes, we're actually going to talk about how you can apply to join your community board. Our borough president, Vanessa Gibson, just put out the timeline of March 4th, I think is our due date. And so we're going to hear from John about best practices on joining your community board. If you need support from us to apply for your community board, we can help facilitate that. And also, some of the considerations with notarizing your application, all that kind of stuff. We'll have that discussion at the end of the forum. And hopefully many of you will be inspired to join your community boards. I know some people find it like a scary and daunting thing, but hopefully after hearing from our community board leaders today, you feel inspired to join up on that, because we really need, as many people who are passionate about community as possible on our boards. Awesome. And council member also expressed support in helping people get their community board application submitted, which is amazing. Cool. So we will get into it. We're going to go in order by community board number. So our first speaker today is Lucia Deng from Community Board 5, where she is the co-chair of the Municipal Services Committee, which covers transportation. So Lucia, you want to get us started today?
Sure, thanks. And it's great to see Althea. Community Board 5 covers her district, as well as my council member, Pierina Sanchez. So my name is Lucia Deng. I live in Mount Hope. which is in the West Tremont section of the West Bronx. I'm a healthcare technology attorney by day. And I run with Bronx Soul. I race bikes with CRCA, which is really the nation's largest bike racing club. And we put on races and help develop racers and riders. I also volunteer with Transportation Alternatives on the Bronx Volunteer Activist Committee. So shout out to them and Sean. And I'm very recently the co-chair of Community Board 5's Municipal Services Committee, which covers issues relating to any kind of municipal services, but certainly including transportation issues. You know, I really only started attending community board meetings once they became accessible online. That allowed me to kind of, you know, finally be able to attend, which I'd been wanting to do for a while. So I started attending in the spring of 2020. And then I applied for CB5 membership in, you know, early 2021 and got on. And then immediately I saw sort of an opening in the Municipal Services Committee position, the co-chair position. And, you know, our president, chair of the community board, strongly believes that, you know, you don't have to have lived in the community for decades or, you know, have to have served on the community board for a really long time to have legitimate input in the community. So he's very welcoming of new folks and fresh ideas and you know, wanting to diversify our community board. So I'm really grateful for that. So because I'm still relatively new to the committee, I don't have a long list of accomplishments like probably some of our colleagues here would, but one small win that I can share is that I was able to get the Department of Transportation to get rid of all the poison ivy that was on the Washington Bridge. I don't know how many of you use that crucial, you know, connection to Washington Heights that we have over here in Community Board 5, but there was poison ivy sticking out along the fencing and it was really dangerous. I'm really allergic. And, you know, I was able to work with our district manager to sort of get that removed. So that I'll count that as a win. On top of that, you know, what I've been doing is really closely monitoring the progress of sort of the existing and planned projects. Two big ones in our district are phase 4 of the Grand Concourse reconstruction. That's sort of been an ongoing project that has been going on for maybe too long. And then also we've been overseeing sort of major changes to University Avenue, which, you know, south of the Washington Bridge is the Edward L. Grant Highway. There's been a lot of bus priority treatments done there, as well as protected bike lanes. In terms of what I'd like to see in 5 years, I mean, I'd really love to see more protected bike lanes and self-enforcing bus and bike lanes along every major thoroughfare in our district to help ease the traffic congestion, to help you know, make it safer for folks to get around and really be able to rely on public transit and other forms of mobility so that, you know, we allow the people who really need to drive around, you know, the space to do so. You know, mostly what I've been doing because I'm so new is really just showing up and listening to folks talk at community board meetings. I've been getting around, you know, walking through the community, trying to observe and seeing and hearing what's happening and what our neighbors want. I feel like that's really the only way I can do a better job representing the community in trying to requisition and plan new projects. Yeah, I guess that's more or less it. I'm sure we'll talk about more things, but happy to answer questions. And I'm really looking forward to hearing what's going on in my colleagues' districts throughout the Bronx. Thank you.
All right, great. And I'll introduce the next panelist, one of my board members when I served at CB6, Magda Marcano.
Good afternoon. Community Board 6, the for about years during my previous stint. Now I'm a regular board member. I sit on the transportation committee and all the other ones as well, because I think every single committee is very important. Well, the job of each committee is very important to each other. So we should be interacting all the time. Of course, we impact what each other does. As far as being here and some of my proud moments, Vision Zero was my biggest one while I was transportation chair. I thought that was the greatest thing we ever did. Unfortunately, it has not been turning out the way we expected it to. And what I see is that there's such lack of enforcement in New York City during the last administration that it's become a failure. And we depend so much on cameras to do the work of our traffic agents and our police department that we forget that technology is not the only answer. And I am very sorry that Vision Zero is not working out. But further on during the course of this session, I will express some of the views of my community, because I did get in touch with them to get their viewpoints on each of the questions that were presented to us by the alternative, Transportation Alternatives Group. So without further ado, back to you, Sean.
Thank you so much, and good to have you here. There was a good link shared in the chat by Luke that has like a map of the community board. So if you're not sure where you live and what community board you're in, check that out. But also, as we're going through the speakers, if you could check out and reference that map so you know which neighborhoods this community board is representing as we're going through the conversation. I think it's helpful. And so we'll move on to our next one. We're joined by Edgar Ramos from Community Board 7, he's the chair of transportation over there. So Edgar, you can take the mic.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Edgar Ramos. I'm the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, the CB7. I'm also a union Local 3 member for construction as an electrician. So, you know, I spend a lot of time outside. And I see a lot of things. You know, I worked on projects like the Cross Bronx when they changed the lighting on it. So I was on the highway for almost a year. So I have a kind of different objective of some of these roadways. You know, we've done lighting along the corridors, under the Cross Bronx, across the bus depots, you know, stuff like that. You know, basically, you know, I'm here to try to help keep the roads safe, you know, keep everybody on their promises, because everyone wants to promise that we're going to improve this, we're going to improve that. And it's just a matter of following up and keeping them on their promises. I'm up in the north region, basically like Norwood, Mushula Parkway, Kingsbridge area. So we have, you know, the Greenway along Mushula Parkway where the Grand Concourse ends. So there's a lot of changing over. And it really hasn't been looked at very well. You know, they're trying to change the corridor of the Grand Concourse to a a bike route, but it ends into Mushula Parkway, which hasn't been really prepared for bikes. Had a meeting yesterday with DOT actually, where they're actually looking to improve that little corridor. They have bike paths going down Broadway. They got bike paths going down Southern Boulevard, but there's no interconnect going across. So they're looking at that. So, you know, hopefully we'll have some good things. Hopefully things won't take as long as they have been. Because I know young lady mentioned the concourse being worked on, and that the last pieces have been taking a while because of lack of funding, because of changes in objectives as far as what DOT finds important. So that last piece has taken a while. So we're hoping that it's done properly and in a way that helps everyone co-live, you know. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I love that the theme of like co-living together, right? This co-inhabitation, like creating space for everybody. So we'll get into our next speaker, and we're just going a little further north. We're going up to Community Board 8, and we got Deb Travis, the chair of transportation over there.
Thanks, Sean. Actually, I think I am directly beside Edgar. We're his neighbor to the west. And so Community Board 8 is Kingsbridge Heights, so we're right around the reservoir. And then we go all the way over to the Hudson River. So encompass Kingsbridge, Spuyten Duyvil, Riverdale, Marble Hill, and North Riverdale. I have been on the community board for 3 years. I serve as I'm the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, but I'm also a member of the Environment and Sanitation Committee and the Parks Committee. I originally got involved, I moved up to the Bronx in 2016, and I started a parks stewardship group called Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors. And that got me involved with the community board, because a lot of Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors originally came out of the idea that there was just a lot of litter, and there were a lot of weeds and plants that were overgrowing all of the plantings around Jerome Park Reservoir. And so Jerome Park Friends and Neighbors, our whole thing is we do 20 to 25 It's My Park days every year, where we do cleaning and greening around the reservoir. And so that brought me to the community board meetings. And then I started to meet folks. I applied for I just decided I kind of enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the discussion, and it connected me much more deeply to the kind of nuts and bolts of how decisions were being made within the community itself. And so I applied in 2017 and I did not get on. And then I applied in 2018 and I did not get on. And then I applied in 2019 on a whim, because I was like, I'm too busy, but I'll just submit the application. It's already filled out, and I got on. and then I joined right away with Environment, Sanitation, and Parks, which were the two meetings that I had been going to for years. And then joined the Traffic and Transportation Committee on my second year. Let's see, as far as our major projects, and then the other piece too, is the reason I joined Traffic and Transportation is that I work for Zipcar. I've worked for Zipcar for several years now. And so working for Zipcar gives me a lot of kind of day-to-day experience in parking and car share, and how how there are just better ways of managing streets, and particularly around parking. And so that really made me want to be more involved with the Traffic and Transportation Committee, which is how I originally, I was kind of the original impetus. So this is my very first year as chair. I've been chair since September. Our project so far have really been working with the Environment and Sanitation Committee to address stormwater runoff on the Major Deegan, which you may have remember from Hurricane Ida and Henri, and then also in some of the other smaller corridors where there's stormwater runoff. And then we're working also closely with that committee on the new Greenway that'll be running along the Major Deegan that'll be part of the daylighting of Tibbetts Brook, which is like just a super exciting thing. I can't claim any stake in it except my enthusiasm that I share with all these folks who've been working for decades to try to make this happen. And I'm just very excited to be part of that. This year, we've been focusing on ourselves, this committee, on Bailey Avenue. Just the crashes from cars there and dangerous crossing conditions. And then, other kind of priorities or 5-year priorities, I would say, are really just trying to get more engagement and doing more outreach with the community so that we have a broader selection of people, or like the broadest possible selection of people who are contributing to ideas and discussions that directly impact them. Too often, a committee can have a discussion about an intersection or a stretch of road, and the 2 or 3 people, or may be the ones that are making the decisions and or advocating or show up to advocate against something because the small group of people are of like mind and they showed up together. And it doesn't intuitively feel as though a broad enough range of opinions and range of experiences are getting represented. So that's one of our focuses. And then finally, just to bring more speakers to come and talk, just to raise the level of discussion so that we're talking about, you know, based in facts and based in what the best practices are that we know for the streets. All right, it's 30 seconds. I'm going to let go of the mic. Back to you, Sean.
Awesome. Thank you, Deb. And before we get to our next panelists, we actually had a last minute cancellation. Shanti from Community Board 9 unfortunately couldn't join us today. And so hopefully we'll be able to hear more from her at a later date. But I did want to, I just saw jump into the meeting. We have another council member who her district actually Community Board 9 is part of. And of course, we're not asking you to speak on Community Board 9, but I want to give some space really quick to Council Member Amanda Farias, who is also another new member along with Council Member Stevens on the City Council Transportation Committee. Amanda, it's great to have you here. If you could just share a couple words and you know, your thoughts on transportation in the Bronx.
Hi, everyone. Councilmember Amanda Farias here. Really grateful to share some space with y'all today. So I cover the Southeast Bronx, which is Council District 18. That represents Soundview, Parkchester, Castle Hill, Harding Park, and Classen Point. And some of y'all may have known already, but I have a lot of opinions on transportation in the Bronx, a few that came out yesterday or the day before. But this is a really important conversation because really we are, like most of the outer boroughs, a transit desert, but the Bronx particularly has been really left out of the conversation and left behind. And what better way than to start working on transit justice that at the community board, the most local level that is impacting our day-to-day, our neighbors, our families, our students moving through our communities. So you know, what I think we need to work on is a lot of different things on making it more accessible, more equitable, and at least equitably distributed, but also audio visual ADA compliant equity throughout our borough. The biggest thing I've been talking about lately is the interborough, making that a tri-borough, but also because the Bronx just doesn't have access to east-west transportation. We're finding other ways to mitigate some of that cost, some of that time that we get to spend away from our families because we have to have long commutes. Thank you, Camelia, for putting it in there. But really, we need to push harder on local electeds like myself and above to fight for equity in transit for all of our riders and commuters. And young and older adults. It's really a necessity here in our borough, and I'm really proud to be sharing space with all of you advocates and people that are fighting for that alongside me every single day. So thank you for all of your work and the time you're committing here.
Great, thank you, Council Member. We're going to be introducing a few more panelists. The next one we have is the Chair of the Transportation Committee for CB11, Christian Amato.
Hi there, thank you for having me. I'm honored to join so many of my colleagues from community boards across the Bronx. And of course, it's a privilege to follow Council Member Farias and talk about, you know, our concerns and our transportation initiatives on this side. I'm the Vice Chair of Transportation for CB11. The Chair of Transportation is a gentleman named Rabbi Fuchs, but I'm happy to be here today. Community Board 11 It follows the same map as the 49th precinct, but it encompasses the neighborhoods of Allerton, Indian Village, Morris Park, Pelham Parkway, Pelham Gardens, Van Nest, and a sliver of Bronx Park East as well. And we are in the western corner of the East Bronx, sort of the farthest west corner of the East Bronx. And when I joined the community board, I'm now on my second term. So I've served 2 years. I get to serve another 2. I've been on the transportation committee since the beginning. And I joined CB 11 shortly after I stopped working in the New York State Senate. And I was fortunate enough to represent CB 11 as a constituent liaison for the Senate, and really became familiar with the issues and the concerns of the area. Of course, having grown up in the area and lived here my entire life, I was familiar, but being able to interface with the community and the constituency and learn more about what people were passionate about, I just wanted to get more involved, and I wanted to take that energy and sort of insight that I had from the time serving the community and utilize it on the community board to try to fight for some great projects, great transit infrastructure. So I've been on the transportation committee for going on 3.5 years now. At the beginning of this term, I was made the vice chair of transportation. But in my time on CB11, I also started our equity committee. And through our equity committee, we were able to tackle a transit project that I thought was really interesting and helped inform DOT. What we did was, through an equity lens, we monitored all of our crosswalks and our widest intersections. We have an aging population in this community. We're not too different from CB8. Some of the concerns Deb had, are reflected in this community board as well. When it comes to attendance, when it comes to the issues, there's a lot of similarities. That being said, what we did with the equity committee was we monitored all these intersections to see which intersections were too wide for the aging population to cross, which intersections necessitated hearing devices or devices for the visually impaired to make sure that people can guarantee safe crossing across these streets. And the equity committee passed those concerns along to DOT, which immediately got to work adding traffic medians and devices that could help the hearing or visually impaired safely cross those streets. So I think that was a real win and an example of 2 committees working together, one for the sake of equity, but 2 for the sake of improving our transportation. And of course, we've got a wide array of concerns, and we've definitely got a mobilized and active group of transit advocates in this side of the community. But I think looking at our 5 and 10 year transportation vision for our district, we definitely could benefit from more bike lanes, protected bike lanes, and connecting those existing routes. Our community has really wide boulevards that could be part of Transportation Alternatives' brilliant 25 by 25 plan. We need accessible stations. We're still left behind when it comes to transit accessibility. And of course, as Amanda said, transit equity is super important. That inclusion in the interborough line is very important. And I'm sure we'll talk about more today, but I'm really happy to be with all of you this snowy afternoon.
Christian, thank you so much. Also, shout out to Christian running for state committee, and maybe we can have a whole other forum on state committee, district leaders joining your county committee, important places to be too as we're doing this advocacy work. Last speaker we'll have on the panel doing a quick introduction. Staying over on the East Bronx, we're going to go up to CB12, and we're joined by John Isaac. John, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. John Isaac, Community Board 12. I'm the second vice chair, chairman of transportation. I represent Baychester, Edenwall, Olinville, Woodlawn, Wakefield, and Williamsbridge area. our biggest problem we've been having up in the Northeast Bronx area is the speeding. And we've tried different traffic calming ideas, narrowing the intersections and doing all kind of different things like cutting lanes down, the speed cameras. And what's happening is that people are cutting through now the local blocks, where the residential blocks, I should say, I'm sorry. And it's creating an issue with the kids playing and all that stuff, and the commercial traffic trying to bypass these cameras and the traffic jams, and they're cutting through the residential blocks. Also, a lot of the apps, Waze and Google Maps, have been like diverting traffic around through a couple of the blocks and creating problems. So, I mean, we got big issues created by some of the improvements. I actually think my education and everything is in urban planning and landscape architecture. I work for, I'm a administrative project manager for New York City DEP and the Green Infrastructure Program. So, you know, my education stems back from planning and landscape architecture. So I actually want to get back into doing some of that with our chairman, Dr. Burke. We want to look at more master plan of the whole area. The New York City DOT, they're talking about improving and how the vision of Boston Road would look in the next 10 years or whatever. And their vision is going to be total radical, where a lot of those car repair places and all that stuff is going to be moved. And they're talking about like having commercial areas and opening the corners into plazas, doing a whole bunch of different things. That's something I think all of us should get involved with. The vision of our community and where we're going. You know, we have, I consider them gateway stops from the north coming in to the Bronx, which is Dyer Avenue, 241st Street. And if you consider Woodlawn, the number 4 train, I think Dyer Avenue is not accessible. When you look now, when the train leaves, I usually take the train sometime at 6 o'clock in the morning. There are no seats on the train at 6 o'clock in the morning, leaving Dyer Avenue. So if you're on Baychester or Gun Hill or whatever, and you try to get on, they're completely the train. So that means that we either need more trains or we need a bigger transit system. You know, the outer ring of New York City is busting at the seams right now, and we need to do something about it. And that's just my biggest concern. I drive a lot because, you know, I'm with DEP moving up and down all over the place. So I ask my community members, because I don't bike. I mean, most of my time I spend is either doing construction or fishing. So I ask them to help me and try to find problems with what's going on in the community. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. And thank you so much for all those introductions from our panelists and our council members who were able to join us. I think people are, if you're not already getting a sense of the diversity of all the work that our transportation committees are doing, and the complexity of all these questions, and hopefully throughout the next portion of conversation, we can get deeper into all that stuff. And I also just want to shout out all of our chairs. On a personal note, you know, as someone who's been in the community board and knows the hours that are dedicated to community board meetings and these conversations, these are unpaid, you know, community organizers who are putting in 9, 12 hours at least a month to these conversations, facilitating these conversations and pushing along this work. And I just want to applaud all y'all for y'all continued service and dedication to doing this. So the way that the next portion is going to work is we're going to get into the question period. Again, we're going to start with some pre-made questions. We're going to ask the questions and we're going to allow the panelists to reply to the questions if they want to. You'll get up to 90 seconds to reply. So make sure again that you're watching Dinesh in the chat to see if your time is almost up. So me and John don't have to cut you off. And then after we get through that pre-made question period, we'll get into open floor conversation and people will be able to ask some questions. Also, there's some great conversations happening in the chat. I want to continue to encourage those conversations, and I encourage the panelists to also watch the chat when they get a chance, because there's some great thoughts and feedback being shared in there. So I'll pass it over to my co-facilitator, John, who will take us through that first question.
All right, great. Thank you again for the introductions. I'm very excited. All right, first question, and John touches this a little bit, but we'd love to hear from the others. For the panelists, what is your 5 and 10-year transportation vision for your district? And any panelist can jump in.
This is Magda Marcano, so I'm gonna talk about the 5 and 10-year plan. So we got together and based on our observation as a community board, we came to this conclusion. First of all, the Community Board 6 district is one of the poorest areas in the nation. Community does not understand how the New York City Mayor's Office concluded that the New York City bike program was a feasible solution for our district. It took away parking spaces and it's also not being used pretty much at all. It is an additional unaffordable household expense for the families that live in our district and should have been managed based on the affordability in the area. We would like the bike stands decreased during the next 5 years. Okay, improve accessibility to subway service. That would be a 10-year plan by installing additional elevator service at all train stations along the 2 and 5 lines and the above ground lines on the Westchester line, the number 6. Okay, there should be legal registration and training programs for cyclists, moped riders, etc. Currently, a lot of them violate the road rules, therefore causing many accidents to take place. Maybe if we did something with the training portion, like they do automobile riders, maybe that would improve some of the accidents that take place in our communities. And a 10-year plan, pedestrian bridges on busy and dangerous crossings. For example, entry into the Cross Bronx and Sheridan Boulevard now, straight into Starlight Park. We don't have accessibility without crossing those dangerous streets right around 177th and Wyatt and DeVoe.
And that's time, Magda.
Huh?
That's time, Magda.
I have one more, and that's accessible ferry service, improved bus service from and to the ferry out at the Soundview. The current bus line does not provide accessibility or flexibility for people that want to ride the ferries from the West Farms or any part of District 6 area. Okay, that's it.
All right, next we're gonna go with Christian.
Hey there. Actually, Lucia's hand was raised before mine, if you don't mind giving it to her first.
Oh, that's
Okay,
so,
Lucia.
that's so sweet. Thanks, Christian. Yeah, and I think CB5 is very similar, right, to CB6, and that we're also one of the lowest income communities here in the Bronx. So we face a lot of the same issues, and our community board and our residents and neighbors are also extremely concerned about, what they see as rampant, illegal parking, double parking, a lot of traffic congestion, a lot of traffic crashes and unsafe streets. And I see sort of our role as, in CB5 where, looking at the community needs statement and looking at the census data, right? I would say, 90% of our residents do not drive cars to work. So while it may seem as though a lot of folks drive, that's actually really not the case. So our focus is on how do we bring more services to our community? How do we make transit more accessible, more reliable, faster? How do we incentivize folks to, try to take more trips on transit, maybe in bikes and scooters, walking, increasing access to our bridges. That way, less people do drive, and that makes our streets more open for everyone else who do need to drive. A couple of things that are exciting is maybe on a 10-year plan basis is seeing the movement that's happening with the Cross Bronx capping project. The Cross Bronx runs through our district and certainly causes more pollution and increases our asthma rates and decreases our general health. So I'd love to see that project finally get off the ground and cap some of those sections of the Cross Bronx and maybe put more green space on there. Thanks.
All right, next, thank you for that, Lucia. Next, Christian.
Hey, thank you. So I talked about a little about this earlier, but 5 to 10 year transportation vision, I feel like if we can accomplish this in 10 years, that's going to be a big win. I think our priorities really lie in we're a really walkable community, CB11, and I think that's a major advantage for us. But more bike lanes, protected bike lanes that are connected to the pre-existing routes and expand the bike network. Our community has these wide boulevards that, again, can be part of the 25 by 25 plan. We need transit accessibility. The one train station we have with an escalator, it's always out of order. Municipal parking, and even starting to consider parking permits for people who are parking in the street. If we're going to pay rent for our house, I think our cars should pay rent too, and boost the city's economy. Expansion of multimodal options across the East Bronx, including bringing City Bike to our corner of the East Bronx. The Metro North and the interborough development are huge wins. Hopefully Kathy Hochul can restore the RPA's vision and include the Bronx. 50 years ago, Co-op City was promised a train that has not come yet. If we commit to the RPA's tri-borough line, that will be delivered. More ferries in our coastal communities. I'd love to see a ferry at Orchard Beach. We've got a huge parking lot that sits empty 6 months out of the year. There could be a great utility to having a ferry from Orchard Beach to LaGuardia Airport. We have to be really innovative, and I know my time is up and I have lots of these ideas. So thank you.
All right, thank you. We're going to take one more and then we're going to prioritize the other folks on the next question. I'm going to go with Deb Travis.
Hey there, I can go actually really quickly, which is that I think we don't have specific goals for our committee, but I do think the thing that we bump up against constantly is parking. And I think that there's a lot of, there's the need to do deeper study into how parking works, particularly because we're right up against Westchester, and that there are folks who are parking in Westchester, who are coming from Westchester and parking in our district. There are people who are, we don't really have a good sense of who owns the cars, who could afford to pay for the parking, who can't afford to pay for the parking, et cetera. And so I think we could be a lot smarter about meters and zoning and things around parking. So we wouldn't be giving up so much in order to have places to park our cars. So I think that's one of the things that the committee could really dig in and try to work on over the next few years.
Awesome.
All right, thank you, Deb. Now, Sean, you'll go next.
Cool. And yeah, panelists who didn't get to speak on that topic will prioritize you on the next one if you want to speak on the next one. And it's kind of building on the conversation that was brought up a few times. The question is, you know, on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being of great urgency, how does your community board and just your community in general view street safety? So, John, did you want to address this one?
Well, it's a 10 for us in Community Board 12. We've had some intersections that were on the Vision Zero list, and a lot of the violations and safety issues were addressed by DOT. You know, so it is our #1 priority. So, but again, by them changing those safety, by them adding those safety features, they actually caused other problems, which is like, there's a problem I'm running into. Like, we fix one thing and then it's like we create another problem. So I think we gotta be more innovative and be more forward thinking about the things that we're doing. So that's just my comment.
Thank you, John. And I got Edgar next on the stack. You muted. Edgar, you muted. Sorry about that.
Sorry. There are a lot of stuff that came up through Vision Zero, a lot of safe street programs that the DOT came and presented, and some of them were great ideas, some of them are so-so ideas. And the problem is the funding, right? Because of COVID, because of whatever different reasons, a lot of these projects got presented, got voted on, and just stalled. We're at a point now where we've got to wait and see what's going to happen with those projects. They came to us and said that the stimulus money that was given to the governments was going to be used for DOT. They were pushing a lot of programs back through, but you know, construction just hasn't started. So we got to wait and see how some of those improvements, you know, how they work out for the community. You know, a lot of them are really presented around schools. A lot of the walkways to schools are very treacherous, very dangerous, and we want our kids to be safe, you know, and even the parents, when they go to take the kids, they need to be safe, getting there and getting back. So, you know, we hope that some of these improvements make that difference. And just real quick, to the prior question, I had raised my hand to, as far as our 5-year plan and 10-year plan, is we've got some of the biggest hospitals up here. We've got Montefiore, we've got North Central, but we don't have ADA compliant train stations that supply these. So, you know, it's been a long time coming. We've got a new one in Bedford Park. We've got a couple of new elevators that is great, but we still have a lot more that need to be done. We need to work with MTA. And like I said, once again, they've got money now. Hopefully some of that is going to be, you know, presented for those projects. Thanks.
Got to get that money into the Bronx. You're right. All right, cool. And Christian, I got you on this question too.
Cool. Yeah, I think a 10. Our community CB11 is pretty unique. Folks here have lived there their whole lives. So what that means sometimes is, you know, you have a lot of homeowners, a large aging population. And so a major concern is that the elderly can cross the street safely. And so, of course, as I mentioned earlier, we've prioritized building many medians and hearing vision impaired systems to help folks cross the street. But a big issue that's also arising that I think folks are connecting to street safety is truck warehousing. And this is something that I'm seeing happening in the entirety of the East Bronx. You know, truck drivers who, you know, are driving those large shipping trucks live in our communities, and they don't have an adequate place to park these. Many times they own their own, you know, truck. So they're parking them in areas that then become unsafe, and people are stigmatized by, you know, having this very large truck parked in front of your building that someone can hide behind. And so that's become a growing concern. And I think one solution that we're going to hear a lot is bringing some sort of trucking facility to the Bronx, because the closest one we have is in Connecticut. And what it does is it creates these large problems for storage and parking, but also contributes to asthma and street safety as well. So, of course, we're a 10 when it comes to street safety, the 8 concerns for the aging population, but the concerns for, how we're going to handle some of these new truck storage issues that we're encountering as well.
Thank you so much. And I'll swing it back to John for our next question.
Great. So I know not everyone on the call is on their community board, and we do want to highlight some success stories from community boards. There's 59 community boards throughout the city, and there's a lot of good work being done. So to the panelists, can you share an exciting win or development that you participated in through your community board?
Hi, John. This is Magda Marcano again. The left turn bays was one of them. The delayed green lights at corners for right turns so the pedestrians can get across the street. The 2 greenway projects, one that goes north of 180th Street near the train station, and the other one going south at the West Farms Park, leading to Bronx Street on Tremont Avenue, right next to the Bronx River Arts Center. And of course, my favorite one was Vision Zero, which is bringing down the speeding to 25 miles per hour. Those were the big ones for our board.
Thank you, Magda. All right, next panelist. Christian, would you like to go?
Sure. I think the biggest win in the last few years has been the road dieting of Morris Park. Bringing bike lanes, creating, safe turns, safe left turns for the community has been wonderful. We also on the transportation committee approved a plan to convert a section of Bronx Park East about a year ago into a scooter pavilion and bike path, basically redefining an old section of parking in Bronx Park East to help expand bike lanes and provide safe scooter spaces. And that was right before we launched the East Side e-scooter pilot, which we're now on the 7th month of, and it's been going really great. So those are some really big transit wins for our community. Bringing those scooters in and building spaces to utilize them has been really successful thus far.
Great, thank you for that. Next, I'm going to go with John Isaac from CB12.
Yes, one of our biggest accomplishments was the White Plains Road protected bike lanes along the big commercial corridor, and also the 222nd Street link to Shoelace Park. These were major improvements and upgrades to our community.
Ah, perfect. I love the success stories. Let's keep it going. Let's go with Lucia.
Hi, I'm not going to take credit for a lot of these, but recent wins that we've had in Community Board 5 is, the expansion of City Bike through our community and the infill of docking stations where they make sense. I mentioned earlier, University Ave is transforming with a lot of bus priority improvements, bump outs for pedestrians to make it safer for them to wait and load onto buses, as well as protected bike lanes. And certainly the Grand Concourse is receiving a lot of beautification and, eventually adding some, raised protected bike lanes on there. And we recently, while it hasn't been implemented yet, there's strong support for a 3rd Avenue protected bike lanes, as well as additional bus and bike priority treatments along Fordham Road, making that whole corridor more friendly for really all users.
Great. All right, last one, last success story. Edgar.
Hey, basically, our biggest win, I guess it's not completely a win yet. It's not done. The Bronx Bus Redesign. There were a lot of changes and modifications that were going to impact CB7, CB8, a lot of the northern Bronx area with the express bus limiting and route changes. And we were able to voice our opinion and And apparently with everyone that stood up and voiced their opinion, MTA took a step back and looked and saw that they had to rethink their redesign. We got to see what the changes are going to be. So it's not a complete win, but we're glad that we got them to pause some of the stop changes and stop eliminations.
All right, perfect. Thank you everyone for sharing those success stories. Sean will ask the next question.
Awesome, thank you. And we just got 2 more questions and then we'll open up the floor for some other questions. I see some great convos happening in the chat. So we're jumping around a little bit here, but the next question I'm gonna ask is, you know, many folks have a view that, you know, they call for more police enforcement when it comes to transportation issues, safety issues. And we know in the Bronx, we have a unique relationship with police enforcement. So I just want to get thoughts from the different panelists on, you know, what they think about police enforcement and how it can address transportation issues, or maybe there's better means. So I got Lucia first on the stack here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, listen, this is a complicated and nuanced conversation. I think, you know, we do need to have some enforcement. And certainly in Community Board 5, we work very closely with our precinct officers, and we talk on the pain points that are addressing our community constantly. And through these conversations, we can push them to prioritize their focus. And also we kind of hear what their limitations are. You know, there's only so much that NYPD can do, and we need to start thinking of ways that, you know, we can reduce sort of our reliance on the police to fix our transportation issues and pour more resources into street design, you know, and reallocating space and possibly adding sort of automated enforcement, self-enforcement to a lot of these issues that we're facing. So I think, you know, we do need to work collaboratively with our precincts, but also really think outside the box and try to move toward more design-oriented solutions.
Thank you. And I got Christian next and then John.
Yeah, Lucia really hit the nail on the head there. So I definitely second a lot of that. But I mean, I think this is a visceral response in a lot of ways too, and we have to be cognizant of that, especially in light of a pandemic that we're going on a 3rd year of. I think a lot of the calls to put more cops on public transportation are a direct response to visible poverty that makes people uncomfortable. And, you know, I don't think that that's necessarily the reason why cops should be on a train or a bus. You know, for us, the place that acts as a shelter is our subway. For, you know, a community like Miami, they have miles of beaches. You know, these are areas where people who are impoverished currently feel safe. And I don't think that the solution is, you know, policing them more heavily. But that being said, there are safety issues, especially, you know, we think about the news headlines recently, people being pushed into platforms. CB11 has started to discuss this and talk about, you know, incorporating safer designs onto platforms, similarly to Europe, where you have a platform that's protected and only opens when the train has a line to it and lines up to the doors. Obviously, this is a capital expense that, you know, our council members and our state is going to have to get involved in to fund. And we have to then deal with issues of, like, you know, train sizes and the actual infrastructure component. But we do absolutely need to make platforms safer. But I think that can be done through design and less by police officers.
Thanks, Christian. And then I got John.
I think that we actually need more policing also, because on like 233rd Street, we introduced the bike lanes on 233rd Street. You know what? And know what people are doing? They're actually riding in the bike lanes. Like, you'll be in a regular lane, they ride in the bike lane, and they just so they could pass you and speed and stuff like that. We've spoken to the police. We had an issue on my block where they literally come through the block like 70 miles an hour with these pop-in exhausts and all kinds of stuff like that. And the police came, our community officer came, spoke to me, I introduced myself. And, you know, he said, essentially, there's nothing they could do about it. And I think that's not true. I think that they could actually do, you know, they could just sit, I mean, just by sitting there, and they could literally stop the car if they needed to.
All right, thank you, John. We got one more, room for one more on this one. So we'll take Deb, and then we'll have the last question, and Edgar will prioritize you on that last one. So Deb, you want to tackle this one?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think DOT should do parking enforcement and double parking enforcement instead of the police, and let the police deal with public safety stuff, and then automate anything you can. Automation is 24 hours a day, it's 7 days a week, it's consistent and it's fair, and it gets the job done. And so I think that is really, we got the technology, we should use it.
Thanks, everyone. And I'll swing it back to John for that last question.
All right, last question. So, I mean, last year, New York City had about 273 deaths from crashes. In the last week, 4 young children were really hurt through crashes. And the question that I have to the panelists are, how can you make changes to support more people-friendly streets and intersections within your community board to avoid these tragic crashes from occurring?
Good evening. I mean, good afternoon, everyone. You know, some of it is not necessarily the design of the intersections, because like I said, DOT has some in my community board that they're changing to help protect the children. But I think the bigger problem is just the people driving. I mean, I leave to work at 5 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning, and I see people shooting through red lights like there's no reason to stop. You know, I think courtesy and just the common sense of people driving has changed, and I don't know a way to change that. You know, and that kind of comes back to the previous question about the policing. You know, there are certain things that, yeah, it would be nice if the police could do something about, but they don't have laws that properly enforce what they need to do. They can't just tell someone to stop doing something because it's unsafe, right? There's got to be a law to cover it. And I think city council and some of the elected officials have to come together and write laws that help the police to be able to enforce, like bikes on sidewalks, like, you know, certain things like that, that would create a safer environment. You know, the exhausting, they just fixed that. They just made a law that now they can check for audio levels on the exhaust. They didn't have any law like that before. They don't have the devices. They're just now starting to get, you know, the listening devices to enforce that. So, you know, a lot of it is just the lack of courtesy on the streets, and, you know, and give the cops laws that they can enforce, you know. And as far as the parking tickets, you know, traffic enforcement is a separate division of NYPD that's supposed to be doing just tickets, but I don't know what's going on with them. Thank you.
All right, next panelist, I'm gonna pass it to Christian.
Thanks, John. You know, I think in CB11, obviously, there's a section of the community that's heavily reliant on cars for transportation. But that being said, I've witnessed far too much bad behavior from car drivers in the area that I do believe we need more or increased police enforcement, specifically focused on these sorts of issues. For example, illegal turns down one-way streets is something I see very heavily. Super dangerous, especially in areas that, you know, have a high population of young people. I think you know, it's critical that we start enforcing when drivers are making decisions to turn down a one-way street. Similarly, earlier this year, I was crossing Pelham Parkway and was run down by e-scooter. Shouldn't say an e-scooter, more like a Vespa styled bike, but I was run down by basically a Vespa while crossing the street. They were going down the wrong way. I punctured, I broke one of my ribs. It ended up taking 8 weeks to heal. It's really, a bit crazy that you can't cross the street safely. So in matters like that, I'd love to see more enforcement. But again, this goes to our city council, this goes to our state elected officials. We have to see more laws to enforce this type of traffic violation.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. And we're glad that you are recovered. Next, I'm going to pass it to John to speak on this topic.
No, I totally agree with everything that was said by Edgar and Christian. I think it's an issue of education, and legislation. We need to actually get more people out there to educate the people that are driving, because these people that are driving they're people that live in my neighborhood. They live up around the corner, up the block. Those are the ones that are speeding. Those are the ones that are breaking the rules. We need to actually get to them. And through education is probably the only way we could do it.
All right, great. Sean, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really appreciating everyone sharing their positions. I love the comments in the chat too. And I think it's important to remember that we're in community together, right? And like none of us are authorities on these issues. And none of us, well, we have some council members on here, so they got some power, but all of us are working collaboratively on these complex questions, and we're running into very complex kind of situations that we're talking through. And I think what we're trying to do with this forum is really, increase that collaborative mentality, not only between the community boards and their members and the areas that they represent and the folks who are going to community board meetings, but also to other community boards. And hopefully we can come out of this forum where community board members are feeling more empowered to reach out to other community boards, ask their opinions on these things, see what they're doing to troubleshoot and figure out collaborative ways. I mean, we're not disconnected by bodies of water, we're disconnected by arbitrary lines that we call districts. We're still in community together. So I'm really appreciative of that. So we're gonna move into a question period from the floor. We have about 13 minutes for this portion. So when people are asking their question, we ask that you do the raise hand function. If you don't know how to do the raise hand function, if you could physically raise your hand so I can identify you and get you on the stack. And then when you're asking your question, please keep your question under 30 seconds. So try not to put a declaration in that question, and make sure that there's a question in the 30 seconds, just so that we can be really efficient with our time here. So anyone have any questions for our panelists? You can go ahead and raise your hand. Serial, Sario or Serial?
Correct. Cirio Garino. I'm in Edgar's district. I'm well known to going to many community board meetings. I'm there most of the time. My major concern is, once again, the safety for people. You can't walk the streets anymore. The second thing is, cut curbs are made for the handicap. I am a handicapped person. I'm a disability person. I cannot cross the streets because my crosswalks and cut curbs, which are protected by the federal government, are installed, and cars are parked there because there are no white lines for us to cross in. My feeling is that there's a curb on every corner, that should be no car parked there. People in wheelchairs.
Serial, I don't mean to cut you off. I think it's an important point, but do you have a question in there?
Yeah, the question is, what are we going to do about getting the cut curbs unblocked?
Thank you so much. Any of the panelists want to address that question? Go for it, Edgar.
Yeah, good afternoon again. Basically, for some reason, like we really don't understand why traffic enforcement decided that those aren't ticketable anymore, right? For some reason, the DOT section of NYPD, the traffic enforcement that does parking tickets for the most part, they stopped covering that because they say there's not enough parking in the area, and as long as they're not blocking the white lines, that it's not considered summonsable, which makes absolutely no sense because there's some of those corners where you've got curb cuts on both sides and both of them are blocked. What's the person supposed to do? Go down the block to cross the street, you know? And a lot of them, some of them have canes, some of them have walkers, you know, and it doesn't make any sense. We don't understand, and we fought it, but we can't get DOT representation to come and talk about it. So that's the situation with that up in our area.
Thank you, Edgar. And Amanda, Councilwoman, mentioned in the chat, it sounds like an oversight hearing question in the council, which I think is a great place to bring it. You know, as we're talking about accessibility and you know, our cuts on our corners. Anyone else from the panel want to address this? Lucia.
Yeah, I mean, in CB5, you know, these are the kind of issues that we bring up all the time in our meetings when we talk to our precincts. And, you know, if you are able to go to your Build a Block, you know, precinct meetings or your transportation committee meetings, keep bringing this up. You know, I think enforcement seems spotty at best, but you know, I do find that you know, when you build a relationship with your community officers, they do respond to some of these issues. But you know, we definitely need to think of other ways to try to encourage the command, right, to prioritize, because that's what we hear a lot from our officers on the ground is, well, we're not giving the order to focus on these issues, so their hands are a little bit tied. So we need to kind of like move up the chain and figure out who we need to be talking to make this a priority for the folks who are doing the traffic enforcement on the ground.
Thanks, Lucia. And I got Magda on this one as well. Magda, are you there? You're muted. Not sure I was trying to talk.
Okay, here I am.
There you go. There you go.
Okay, so from Community Board 6, I'm pretty much retired, so I walk around my neighborhood all the time. And I noticed that I talked to traffic agents, and they said it's a waste of time to give tickets to plates from outside of New York City, New York State, because they cannot get the revenue from them. So they don't ticket them at all. So that is a direct quotes from several of the traffic agents that are out in the street. Now, if you're not paying taxes in New York City, you really shouldn't be parked on the street for 3 to 6 months with plates from other states. I've called 311, I've placed tickets, the police department closes the ticket, yet the cars are still lingering around the communities until the traffic enforcement people start doing their jobs based on the rules of New York State or the laws in New York State. Nothing's going to be done. Nothing's going to be alleviated as far as accidents, traffic, and parking. We see people transferring fake plates from one car to another. Starts doing their job.
Thank you so much, Magda. We're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to our next question. We have a question in the chat. And again, if anyone wants to ask any questions, raise your hands. We still have another 6 minutes for questions. This question comes from Tom Proctor. Tom asks, what parts of the proposed bus redesign in your CB are you excited about? And what parts in your CB are you worried about? Anyone want to talk to Tom's question on bus redesign? Edgar, go for it. You're muted again.
Try to follow one rule, I'm messing up the other. Basically, one of the biggest problems was the express buses, right? Because they were talking about limiting the times on the express buses, and the Grand Concourse is a corridor where the BXM4 runs. You have the BXM3 that runs down Bailey Avenue, and there's a lot of people that use those buses. Why? Partially because they feel that the subways aren't safe anymore, and you know it's a safer way to ride. You've got a bus driver there, and it's less of a crowd. And they were going to limit these and change some of these stops in a way that was going to limit a lot of the access to Manhattan through most of the day. The BX28, they were talking about eliminating past Bedford Park Boulevard. There was a change, I believe, to the BX10, and there's another bus that's involved in that with the 28 bus that goes around the area of the towers. And it's just, it's the elimination of some of the east to west corridor changes that need to be put in place. You know, the buses that take you from one side of the Bronx Zoo and the Botanical Gardens to the other side. You know, there aren't too many options anymore, and there should be more. You know, but some of the eliminations that we're going to do was going to strongly impact a lot of our commuters.
Thank you so much, Edgar. And before I get to Sarah's question, Magda, do you want to reply to this question on bus redesign as well?
Yes, I'm very excited about the Bronx 36 coming down Tremont Avenue straight is gonna alleviate that traffic jam that congregates on Webster Avenue, and having the 40 going down 180th Street. What I'm not happy about is that we will not have access to the Stop and Shop little parking area, IHOP area on 174th Street, because we're gonna have to take a separate bus or a different bus to get there. And those are the two things in the redesign that are the concern and also the excitement.
Thank you so much. All right, cool. So we'll move on to Sarah's question. Sarah, you go ahead and unmute yourself, ask your question.
Hi, everyone. So I just have a question. I love this event. It's great to see so much organizing within the Bronx and around transportation. I was just curious, how come there weren't like more members from different community boards like paneling as panelists? I was just curious, especially like from BX 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, it's a great, I'll answer that question, Sarah, because I was one of the people helping with organizing. So the way that we did outreach was based off of relationships that we had. So I would say that the, you know, we'll see what Vanessa does on the website and keeping stuff organized for our community boards, but there has been historically a little bit of an issue with community members connecting with community boards, you know, like knowing the emails, knowing how to get in contact with the chairs. And I think we'd love to see more of the community boards, if they had the capacity, to maybe, you know, create more ways for people to connect with them, maybe, you know, websites for their community board, like a lot of community boards around the city do, creating, you know, getting directories of community board chairs, emails, addresses. I think it's an issue citywide, getting in contact with your community board. And so that was really what it was. We were just, who do we know? Who can we reach out to? You know, who in the transportation alternatives community knows somebody on this community board? And that's how we did our outreach for it. But we would love to have, you know, more representation for sure, Sarah. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry,
follow up. Yeah.
That real quick. Sorry.
Go for it.
Oh yeah, so I'm actually a member of Community Board 3, so I'd love to connect with the organization and connect you with the board, because I know that like it takes time for the updates and stuff. So if you'd like to connect, I'd love to make that connection with you. That's all.
That's exciting, Sarah. And I hate to judge you based off of your voice, but you sound like someone of a younger generation, and it's exciting to hear young voices on community boards. We need more. The Bronx, I think we have less than 4% of our community boards under the age of 25. It's a real big issue in our borough. So thank you for your work, Sarah. And Luke one of our chairs will drop his contact information in the chat, and that way we can connect, Sarah. Thank you so much. And then just for time's sake, we had one more question in the chat. I thought that Chauncey, did you want to go ahead and ask your question? It's a little long, so maybe you could get on the mic.
Sure, I'll be super quick. After you know, Chauncey, he, him is resident of Highbridge and part of the Harlem River Working Group. So I just asked, the example of the Harlem River Greenway, we're trying to do a project that is, stretches through, multiple community boards from CB1, CB4, CB5, 7, 8. How's the best way that we can really organize and connect for issues and projects like the Greenway that go through multiple CB districts? I'll take it offline. Thanks.
Thanks, Chauncey. Anyone want to speak to Chauncey's question?
Yeah, I mean, Chauncey, you know where to reach me. So, feel free to set up a meeting or a call or an email chain. And certainly, we'll do what we can to support that from CB5. I'd love to work more with other of my colleagues here on this call on any transportation issues.
Thanks, Lucia. And then I got Deb on the panel. Any other panelists that want to answer this question? This will be the last one for the day. Deb, go for it.
Yeah, I want to just amplify what Lucia's saying too. I agree. I think that it would be really great if people who are on community boards worked with each other more. Like that, that I would love to, actually have conversations with other chairs and people who are on other traffic and transportation committees, because I think there's a lot of ideas that we could share. It would help a lot with just getting folks up to speed, especially new chairs like myself. So heavy plus on that. And same for Chauncey. I think you have my contact information, but we can always be reached through Community Board 8, just reaching out to the office directly. Every email that is sent there, that if you ask to talk to me, it'll get sent to me. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. And then we got Christian last on the stack here, and then we'll move into the next portion of the forum.
Yeah, Chauncey, I dropped my email in the chat. I'd love to talk more about this. Feel free to reach out. But echoing the sentiments of Lucia and Deb, I just want to say this Zoom has just, for me, shown how similar our issues and concerns are across the Bronx. And I love how this has brought us together. And if we as colleagues can work together more to collaborate across the borough, I think that's the best thing to be gained out of this. So I'd love for us to form a Slack or an email chain or something to stay in touch, because I definitely can. I know we can benefit from collaborating.
I mean, what a great way to close out the question period. Thank you so much, Christian. And we'll make sure after this that we definitely connect all the community board members who are on here. If you don't have each other's email, we'll connect you via email after this and figure out how y'all can continue that collaboration going forward. And I just want to thank all the panelists for joining us today. We're not done yet, so don't leave. But I just want to thank you for presenting on your community board, representing for your community board. Also, being candid with your answers, and not feeling like, oh, I'm going to say something and someone's going to judge me because they have a different position. I think that is not the kind of environment that we want to have and nurture when we're talking about collaboration, when we're talking about working together. We really need to hear everyone's positions, whether we agree or disagree, and have that discourse. So thank you again to our panelists. And I'm going to pass it over to John. We're going to enter into the portion of our forum. We're going to talk about how to join a community board. And also too, maybe after John kind of gives his presentation, if any of the community board chairs also want to chime in on, how they think people should apply to their community boards, that'd be helpful too. So John, I'll give the mic to you.
Great. So a brief overview of the application process. Applications in the Bronx are due March 4th, and it's a paper application. You fill it out. It does need to be notarized, and it simply asks you for your address, where you live, organizations you belong to, and some references. It also requires you to attend a community board meeting before you submit your application. And you can find the meeting dates on their websites. But let's say, okay, hey, I just missed the community board general board meeting. You can also attend a committee meeting, and that also will satisfy the requirement of attending a board meeting before. Then after you submit your application in March, generally you start to get interviews either with a council member, staff member, or borough president staff member. That application process, then most board members in the Bronx, I can't speak for other boroughs, you usually hear back around July or August. This past year, I had members find out that they were on the board in September. So it really varies. We'll see what the new borough president does. But generally, between July and September if you're accepted into the community board. And the meeting has to be a community board meeting, specifically sponsored by that community board, not a meeting like this. I will say that there are some barriers to entry that I hope the borough president changes. One, the Bronx is the only borough that requires the application to be notarized. Two, the Bronx is the only borough that doesn't have an online application. It's a paper form that can't be submitted into an online portal. And when we're talking about equity and access, we should not be imposing more barriers on people that want to get involved in their community. There's so many people here on a Saturday afternoon that it's snowing. People want to get involved. We need to encourage that and not discourage it.
Thank you so much, John. And also too, Amanda, I'm not sure if I saw you drop a little emoji thing. Council member, if you wanted to talk a little bit about, from your perspective as a council person, considerations for community board members, because I know you weigh in on that process. Did you want to share any thoughts on this?
Sure, I don't mind chiming in. I mean, I fully agree with what John is saying. The Bronx definitely needs some updating or restructuring on our process. I'm really looking forward to actually interviewing folks to be a part of the community board now that there are term limits and there's a bit more flexibility on moving people in and out of the board to increase more encouragement and engagement and a variety of voices in the coming years. It's really exciting, but primarily, I think outside of being intentional and understanding the commitment, because it is a really big commitment for a volunteer position, it's just knowing that we're bringing a variety of voices and I guess diversity in age and in field and expertise, and really just whether or not folks are committed to a certain type of issue. I think a lot of times we're not able to actually get people engaged. I think part of getting into the community board also means fighting the apathy that we have going on in our communities in the Bronx against participation or government actually working for them, and really being able to touch our neighbors in a real way about what's happening locally. So the more people we have involved and the variety and increasing that diversity and variety of people across neighborhoods is the most encouraging part of it, because that's how we actually fight apathy and get more people included in. So I'm really looking for folks that not only want to be committed to the work on the community board level, but are also committed to really expanding our community as a whole and reaching new people to bring them bring them into the process and have them included in the process. So that's really what I'm looking for new community board members, along with young people. I echo the sentiment of young people as what I would like to consider a young person as well myself. So please apply to your community boards.
Thank you so much, council member. And before we get to Roy and some other questions for the floor, John, I saw you mention in the chat that even if you don't technically get accepted as a community board member, that you can still participate at a different capacity. John, you want to speak a little bit more to that?
Well, I don't know about other community boards, but Community Board 12, if you could become a member of, say, the Transportation Committee and not be on the board. It's the thing is the board members, they're the ones that vote, but you still can influence what goes on. You could still bring information to the committee. You could still impact what's going on in the meetings by being a member. And then we have a form that you fill out and you actually are put on the list. as a committee member of that standing committee.
So like a public member of the committee.
Yes, which is good. The more the merrier. You get different views, different ideas. So and like you said, if we could get more young people involved, they might bring something else that the older people don't see. They have a different vision than we do.
Thank you so much. And it probably helps your chances if you don't get accepted the first go around. If you're participating in the community board at some capacity, it probably helps your chances for future application processes. So we'll get into stack now. Just to close out, we got another 10 minutes. So we'll go down the line. Questions or comments? We got Roy up first.
Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about the barriers to participation aspect that was brought up. I don't know. I hope that this does not come off as a rant. I'm not intending it to come off as a rant, but I'm not too optimistic. I don't know if Community Board 10, where I am, is typical of other community boards, but I have found it exceptionally difficult to extract information from them, even basic stuff like when meetings are scheduled. Their website is never updated. When I talk to them about it, they complain that, well, it's not our problem. We have to deal with the IT department at New York City, and they update our website for us, and they never do. So, if you don't even know when the meetings are, how do you attend? They run a mailing list that they send out stuff. It took me about 2 months of concerted effort and multiple phone calls to actually get on the mailing list. And there was a meeting that I attended a couple months ago. I had a particular issue that I wanted to talk about. Again, it was one of these things that it was like multiple phone calls to the community board office to get on the agenda to speak at the meeting. And when the meeting actually happened, what I discovered was that my phone had been placed on mute. There was no way for me to unmute it, and the whole meeting went by and I never actually got a chance to speak. So yeah, there is an issue with barriers to participation, and I hope we can find some way to address that.
Thanks for bringing that up, Roy. And I think too, it's just something that as a community, as community boards, we kind of also need to self-reflect. Are we making our board accessible? Are we available? Are we really listening to the community? And how can we better that process? And none of us are perfect at it, and we don't have big budgets to do it. So we got to get creative. But Roy, those are really, really important concerns.
Sean, can I jump in real quick?
Yeah, go first, John.
So, I'm not at the community board anymore, but I can speak about these issues. Each community board in the city has about a $270,000 budget. And that budget is paid for by taxpayers. It is a city agency, and the fact that you had to deal with that obstacle is unacceptable. And there's no excuse to say that the city couldn't update the website. Other community boards have made their own website for a low cost, and they update everything on a timely manner. I would put an emphasis on advocacy towards the borough president and the local council members, because they can decrease the community board's budget, and community boards serve the public. And if they're not being responsive to you, please contact your elected officials to ensure that they do so.
Oh, great points, John. All right, cool. We still got a stack here. I got Edgar next on the stack.
Yeah, basically, mine's a quick thing. What they started changing not too long ago, right, is the term limiting for CBs, for community board members. I think that's going to work. I'm hoping that that works greatly to open up those community boards that people that are on there have been on there for 20 years, 25 years, and they've kind of made it a closed community almost. Hopefully this will force the change to get newer voices, fresh voices, and fresh ideas. The thing I'm scared about is that some of these projects that are long-term projects that have taken forever to get the ideas across, they're going to lose the steam because the new person might not think that was a good idea. And, they've been fighting for 10 years, they're about to get it, and now they change path, but like I said, hopefully the change causes new voices, better voices, but it's going to be a problem with communication, because I'm used to talking to one person from CB8 and Deb, the new person from CB8. Now we got to create the connection, and that's going to be hard because people are going to be fluctuating all over the place. But it's something we got to work on.
Yeah, kind of like a transfer of records process. When someone is moving out of position, what does that process look like to empower the next person, reconnect those communication channels? That's important points, Edgar. All right, I got Serial next, Christian, and then Deb, and I think that might take us to time. So go for it, Serial.
Thank you so much. Basically, what I want to say is Community Board 7 has been open to the community. I'm always welcome. I'm not a member of the community board, but I'm a very active participant. So I want to say that Community Board 7 is always there. They're very transparent and they're always on the ball with things. The other thing is I'm against the term limits. I feel that people who've been there should be able to serve, being that is a non-paid position, they should be able to stay there as long as they want, as long as they have an open mind to listen to new ideas. I think the community, the people in the community want to just voice their opinion once and then never follow up. I believe in being very vigilant and very responsible and always following up. And Edgar knows me personally, how I constantly will be there like a pit bull on a bone. If you really want something to change, you gotta live it and breathe it. And that's what I want to say to everybody. And I want to give a heads up to everyone here to be on this Zoom and also to show up at the meetings too. And, you know, thank yourselves really for being considerate of our community and, you know, the best to us all. And I hope that everyone gets their just desserts, so to speak. And we really see a lot of changes for the better. So thank you so much for letting me speak.
Thank you. We appreciate you. And actually, I'm going to throw into the stack Camelia because she hasn't spoken yet. So I want to give her an opportunity to speak, and then we'll go to Christian and Deb.
Hey, thanks so much. I'm here in two capacities, but just want to be clear, I will speak now just as a community board member. And I want to kind of give a counter to what was said just before. I'm strongly and super strongly in favor of limits on community board member service. In Community Board 8, we have 2 people that served over 40 years, a chair that has served over 27 years. People like Deborah, she said how she was rejected 3 times. I was also rejected 3 times. Just to point out that demographics change. There are now demographics that were not represented 40 years ago, 20 years ago, and never have a voice. So the fact that a person has been there 45 years, which is 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, the current legal limit means that a person of a different color, a person with an accent, a person that is shy, didn't get there 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 2, all the way to 45 years. Strongly in 8 years is more than enough for anybody to contribute to that community board. Then they can take a 2-year break. They can be again 8 years on a community board. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I gotta start going to CB8 meetings. I love the energy coming out of CB8. Thanks, Camelia. That was great. Christian, go for it.
Well, first of all, I want to shout out members from my community who are here. Camelia, who's doing excellent work trying to reinvigorate Morris Park Avenue as the head of the bid. Kevin DeLoya, who is an incredible transportation advocate in our community. I think Michael Case is here, another really important transportation advocate in our community, and Diana Finch, who runs BPECA. Thank you all for joining us today here. You're important community members, and we value everything you have to say. Mr. Roy Smith had a comment earlier about CB10. I just want to tout something from CB11. We update our website ourselves. It is one of the most updated community board websites across the Bronx. And you're always welcome to come to a CB11 meeting and see how we can help you level your concerns over at CB10. I know your chair quite well. And I want to just encourage people to apply to CB11. I put my email in the chat. Let me know if you apply. I'd be privileged to advocate for you and encourage folks to get you on the board. We can do that as board members, encourage our chair or the borough president to push through an appointment. So if you are applying, there's 4 vacancies on CB11. please apply. Please let me know. I'd love to advocate for you. We need strong transportation voices in the East Bronx and the entire Bronx. And thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Deb. If you could close us out in like 30 seconds, because we're at time.
I'm just going to say, go to committee meetings, learn if it's something that you would really like to do. And then, and especially if it's something that you're interested in. I would love to have more transportation advocates coming to Community Board 8 meetings and asking for things and organizing within our community. That would really be wonderful. So just for me, if you're in the Community Board 8, figure stuff out, come to me, talk to us about it. But then also, if you're interested in community board life, come to the committees and get a sense of what it's like, and see if it's it's a good fit.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you to all of our panelists for taking the time and the energy to be with us on top of your, all your other meetings that are 3 hours long. We really appreciate y'all. Thank you to our council members, Amanda and Althea, for joining us. I mean, it's really, I think we need to realize that we had a transportation forum on the Bronx, and 2 of our new city council transportation committee members took their time to be here with us. And I think that is a great sign for what we can do here in the Bronx, and have those champions with them is amazing for us as a community. Thank you, of course, to my counterpart, John, for helping facilitate this event today. And also behind the scenes, thank you to Tom and Luke from our committee, from the Transalt Committee, who were helping with recording, engaging in the chat. I know some others like Ed and Chauncey were also engaging in the chat a lot. Thank you so much. And big thank you to Dinesh, who had the most exciting job of keeping time and keeping us all in order. I really appreciate you. So we'll have this recording up in the next couple of days. We'll share it out. Will be some follow-up emails to everyone who registered for the event about different activities that we have going on in the Bronx around transportation and how you can plug in, and of course, how to apply for your community board. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our organization. Feel free to reach out to the respective chairs and different members of the community boards that you're applying to, and the council members who also have a lot of say on who gets onto the community boards. So thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Will the recording be replayed soon?
Yeah, we're gonna upload it onto our YouTube channels this week, so we'll get it out in a couple of days. And when we do, we'll share it out on the networks and an email.
Sean, you should make this like an annual meeting, like the people from parks do the speak up.
That's a great idea.
Thank
Bring
you.
it up at our next meeting. Thank you, y'all.